this is Mike Green, and this is Sunset Strings. We'll get to the features in a minute, but I hope from that little intro you get an idea of just some of the things this library can do, and more importantly, the sound of this library. We hired LA session players and recorded in Studio A, the big room, at United Recording, formerly known as Ocean Way, here in Hollywood, on Sunset Boulevard. It cost a lot more to do it here, the studio's not cheap, and the players definitely weren't cheap, but I think the results are worth it. Now, this instrument is pretty deep, so to make things a little easier to start, I'm going to turn off the releases. You can do that here, or we have key switches for the attacks and releases. And since we're on the topic of key switches, the user presets can also be selected with them, which is how I transition between the articulations in that intro piece. So, we'll get to the attacks and releases later, but for now, let's start with the bottom layer and the top layer, which is the core of what Sunset Strings is all about. Using the mod wheel, we can choose how much of each layer you want to hear. If the mod wheel is all the way down, I hear just the bottom layer. Or with the mod wheel up, we hear the top layer. In this case, it's short crescendos. Now, this is one of the repetition articulations, which is a separate set of samples controlled by this speed knob. I'll explain how those work later, but for now, let's see how the transition between the two layers works using the mod wheel. Bottom of the mod wheel, bottom layer. Top of the mod wheel, top layer. Now, as we develop this instrument, we realize that for a lot of these combinations, you don't necessarily want to hear only the top layer when the mod wheel is up. Like with these short crescendos, I'm not so sure I want to hear them all by themselves. Personally, I want the sultastos to still be playing with those short crescendos. So, we also have this option here, where that bottom layer keeps playing as you bring in the top layer. Now that's more like it. For me, that's how I usually set it. You also have this third option where both the top and bottom layers are playing full no matter what the mod wheel is doing. It's pretty much just turning the mod wheel off so the top and bottom layers both play. Now, since we're here, we should probably look at expression as well. There are two ways you can control expression. One way is with CC11 on your keyboard controller. Then the other way is that you can use the mod wheel for expression. So you click this link button. So now the mod wheel does whatever you selected here. I'll select my favorite crossfade option, and it controls expression. That's why it's a link button. Now, here's the trick that you need to know. When the mod wheel controls expression, you don't necessarily want it to go all the way to ultra quiet. So now this knob determines how much expression the mod wheel will add. So you can fine-tune how expressive you want this to be. Okay, so this link method is especially useful for more traditional combinations, like if the bottom layer is a sultasto, or you know what? Let's do flattando, and then we'll have a normal vibrato for the top layer. So the mod wheel will go from flattando to vibrato and do expression as well. Cool, right? The point of all this is that we wanted Sunset Strings to be playable, so you can come up with ideas really quickly. Like, check this out. Let's do harmonics in the bottom layer and pitch drift for the top layer. I think you can see how easy it is to get creative with this. In fact, I'm getting a little ahead of myself here, but I got an idea. So let's add a release to this. I'll do a quick slide. Now, we don't want to hear these slides at the end of every note. I only want them at the very end. So we'll use this key switch so we can engage the release when the time comes. Check it out. see that coming, did you? Okay, so we'll come back to the attacks and releases later, because first we need to check out some of these top and bottom layer articulations. There are lots of them. Now, you don't have to have both layers on at the same time, so I'll turn off the bottom layer so we can focus just on the top. They're identical, so I could have done it the other way around, but we got to choose one, so I'll choose the top layer. So you can open and close by clicking here, and you can see we have all these categories here. Let's stay with the main sustain articulations for now. I'm not going to be able to go through all of these, but keep in mind we have a 30-day full refund policy. So if you don't think they sound as great as I do, and I admit I'm a little biased, but if you don't love the sound, you get your money back. So anyway, there's sultastos, normals, flautando. You know what? I'm going to pull up these harmonics again. I just love these harmonics. But the real reason I'm playing them again is because this is a good time to mention a special feature. And that is that if you click this little gear, then it brings up a volume knob and a transpose menu for that specific element. The volume is handy if you want to fine-tune the balance between layers, and the transpose option is handy for something like harmonics, where maybe you might want to have them an octave higher. So this gives you that option. Just click the left or right buttons and it goes up or down in octaves, or shift-click and you can go in semitones, which I'm not sure how often I'd want to do that, but if you want to add some extra tension between the two layers, it could be useful, so there you go. So anyway, let's raise the harmonics up an octave and bring back sultasto for the bottom layer. Pretty cool, right? Okay, so let's check out some of these other articulations. We already heard pitch drift, but I'll play a single note so you can get an idea of what it really does. That's like instant creepiness. No offense, session players. So then we have tremolo. Not bad. And slow tremolo. It's like a pulsing shimmer effect that adds life to tracks. These sustain samples are all around 30 seconds long, by the way, so even a straight sustain has life to it. They're also looped, of course, but we didn't want these performances to be static, so we had the players play musically as they'd hold these notes. But anyway, moving on, we've got random bow change. That one's another pulsing kind of shimmery articulation. Then there's overpressed. Overpressed bursts. Hopefully I don't have to tell you that that's another good one to combine with another layer. Okay, so now here's raindrop sustain. Pretty cool with those little ricochets in there, right? Well, I'm going to tell you a little secret. As we recorded these, we started thinking, wait a minute, how cool would it be if we could control how often those ricochets play? What if we could make them independent? And that's where we got the idea for the repetitions category, which I'm getting ahead of myself once again, but there you go. So anyway, kitchen sink is where we literally told the players to play whatever they want all at once. We did a lot of experiments like that, and this one was worth keeping. Then there's pizzicato tremolo. And then waves, which is crescendos and decrescendos in continuous waves, so long chords can do some pretty cool stuff. I'm going to play a single static chord and the players will do the rest. Check this out. That was just me holding one chord. If you blend that with a straighter sustain in another layer, it's a good way to give even more of a sense of breathing. The concept of the two waves articulations is simple, but they really pay off. It's like instant film score. Okay, so now let's look at the trills. We did semitones. Of course, we did whole tones. But most collections don't give you minor thirds, at least not until Realitone entered the game. Or major thirds. Why is Realitone so good to us? Now, you know what I'm going to do next, right? You guessed it, we can make them crossfade. I can think of a lot of uses for that one. Anyway, there's expanding trills. And we started this video with harmonic trills. So now let's head into my favorite part of this collection, and that is the repetitions. I explained before about when we recorded the raindrop sustains, we realized why not record a whole pile of individual ricochets, and then we could set those up so they get triggered however we want. The engine behind this is complicated. I know, because I coded it. It's not a simple loop. There's humanness to the timings as well as which player plays a note. Could be a violin, could be a viola, could be a cello, and of course we had the basses do this too, with a whole lot of round robins. Check it out. Or with chords. And you'll notice this speed knob appears when a repetition is selected. So if you want lots of ricochets, turn the speed up. Or turn it down for not so many ricochets. Now, you know where we're headed with this, right? You guessed it. Let's bring that bottom layer back in and invite our old friend Mr. Mod Wheel to the party. And it's not just ricochets. Earlier we were playing with these short crescendos. And then we've got sul-pont tremolos. Check these out. I like that, but let's take this a step further. I'm going to use harmonics and have them play up an octave. And my very favorite of all are these random harmonics. I'll play just one note first. So now if we play chords, maybe it's just me, but I love that sound. Okay, so then we have the Bartok pits, same idea, and Colanio drops, same idea. So let's move on to the swells. Now, these are actual recordings of them playing these swells. They're not faked with attack and release envelopes. I like these a lot, but I think you get the idea, and this video is getting long. So let's move on to the shorts. Pretty nice. We did 4 round robins for those pizzicatos. For these staccatos, we did 5 round robins and 3 velocity layers. So you're probably wondering why we would have shorts in a textual library. Well, here's another secret. We hadn't planned on doing shorts, but at the end of one of our recording days, we had a little time left, but not enough time to do another long articulation. But these players are really good, and their tuning is excellent, so we figured why not try a short experiment. It was pretty amazing how fast it went. Like I said, their tuning is excellent, so if you don't have to keep doing retakes for tuning, staccatos and pizzicatos go pretty fast. So we put together a little test instrument in Contact. It sounded pretty good, so we figured why not include it. So here we are. So now let's get back to the sounds that are more in keeping with what Sunset Strings is about, like these big crescendos. And these ricochets. Short crescendos. And you get the idea. These 6 are from the repetitions category, but here they're single shots. So let's move on to the effects category. Do I have to say it? Nope, I'm gonna just do it. All right, I'm going to stop saying it. So here's the harmonic gliss ensemble. And this is what we call jitter. We call this one clockwork. And this is a rise. And there's a descend, and then here's seagulls. Must resist temptation. All right, I'm okay. Especially since it's time to introduce a new temptation, the attacks and releases. So let's close this, and we'll open the attack menu, and we can see these 5 categories. The slow bends are what I used in that intro piece. You can do the same thing with the release. What I like to do is the opposite of the attack, so it's like a bookend. So if the attack is up a half step, I'll release with down a half step. So you can go up or down, a half step or a whole step, and with 2 different lengths. So let's try an attack that goes down a whole step and is long, with the matching release. I love those. So let's look at the quick slides category. Now, here's a tip. When you're auditioning attacks or even sustains, turn off the releases, especially if it's a long release. Otherwise, you have to keep hearing those long releases. I mean, maybe that's what you want, but it's going to slow me down here, so I'm going to turn it off. So, you've got a grace note up, a 4th up, a 5th up, grace note down, 4th down, and 5th down. The releases aren't really bookends for the grace notes like they are with the slow bends, so for these I'll turn off the attack, and I'll select quick slide up a 4th. Single short notes are pretty cool with this too. That's not what those were supposed to be for, but I've been using them that way anyway. So this next category is crescendos and decrescendos. These are actual recorded crescendos and decrescendos, and they work how you'd expect. So let's skip those and move on to what we call scatter. Check it out. So each person in the section goes their own way when they release the note. I always wanted a library that could do this, like what Michael Giacchino did with Lost. Anyway, that was short. This is long. Or with a chord. Pretty crazy. But now let's check out the attack counterpart, which does the same thing in reverse. We call this converge. Now, where have I heard that before? Although, I don't think they did it with strings. Now, there's a short converge as well. I find that one really useful. Okay, so the last set of attacks that we have are the short ones. We've got one that we call quick. I know, it's not spectacular. Bear in mind that all the articulations in Sunset Strings use natural attacks, so we recorded various attack speeds in the crescendo section. Quick used to be in there since it's the fastest crescendo, but it's not really a crescendo, so it confused some people, so we moved it here. More obvious is this sforzando. Ooh. So now let's look at the short releases, starting with natural off, which is the players actually ending their notes instead of a release envelope. I'll turn off the reverb so you can get a better sense of the release. And then we've got a crescendo ending, and then a bigger one. And with any of these releases, if you just play a quick note, you'll hear just the release. Okay, so now you've mastered sound creation with Sunset Strings. But what if you want those sounds to change in the middle of a performance, like what I did with the piece that started this video? Well, that's where these user presets come in. You can recall a preset by clicking on it, or with these key switches. You can clear a preset by clicking this little X. And when it's empty, if you click any of these buttons, it saves whatever the settings are for the attack, release, and top and bottom layers there. So right now, this is all saved as a preset. So let's change a few things, save that as a different preset. Now we can recall these two presets here, or with key switches. Easy, right? And as I mentioned earlier, there are key switches for the attacks and releases as well. All right, last but not least, we have this bottom section here. Personally, I like a cleaner look, so you can click this little button here to make it disappear. But since I'm about to explain this section, it's probably not the best time to hide the controls that I'm about to explain. So we click again. Okay, so earlier we talked about the mod wheel behavior and the expression options. You're an expert now, right? Good. So then we have the basses and the high strings. Violins, violas, and cellos were all recorded together as an ensemble, but basses were recorded separately, so you can control them independently here. One extra trick is that you can shift the octave of the basses. By default, the basses are playing at the same pitch as everybody else. But you also have the option for them to play an octave lower. So with an ensemble, the difference is this. Of course, even if you have the basses set to the same octave as the cellos, you still have access to the lower bass notes by playing down here. These guys had such a great tone. And, in case you're wondering, all three bassists brought low C extensions. I do love bass. Okay, so here you have your three mic positions and assignable outputs and all that stuff. I think you can figure that part out on your own. And that's Sunset Strings. We're really happy with how this came out, and I hope you are too. Thanks for watching.